What is going on, people? We are Tottenham TV here, back again with another Tottenham update for you guys. Before we get into the news, do go and check us out on all audio platforms. We are now putting all our content for all audio listeners and podcast listeners. If you want to go check that out, mainly on Spotify, and also go check out our written content on WeAreTottenhamTV.com, which is in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen right now. Joining me on today's Tottenham update, I've got Barnaby Slater from the Spurred On podcast. How are we doing, Barnaby?
Yes, mate. Very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, look, just got some Spurs withdrawals, and we've got some Ange Ball withdrawals, having no Spurs game this weekend, but we've got some Spurs news to talk about. And let's start with Manor Solomon. Ali Gold has confirmed that Manor Solomon is set to return to Tottenham training in the coming days, and if he makes it through the coming week without any further setbacks, the winger could be available as an option for the bench against Palace if Postecoglou feels he is ready. A lot of people are getting very excited with the potential return of Manor Solomon. He did have a fairly decent start, I would say, at the beginning of the season. You know, a few decent performances. I remember against Burnley, got a couple of assists. Sheffield United had a decent game. Then obviously picked up quite a serious injury. Has had a couple of setbacks since coming back from that injury. Now is set to return, hopefully, against Crystal Palace on the bench. Ali Gold is saying, is he someone you reckon could make a big impact once he comes back?
He offers us something different, so that's good. I think most likely it'll be from the bench, won't it? I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of, obviously we had the Wolves game last game and we've got Palace coming up next. And realistically, they'll probably play a deep block as well, similar to how Wolves did. And what Solomon seems to like to do is, you know, at pace, cut in from the left. And that will be going more into where all the players will be, because they'll play a very narrow, deep block like a lot of teams have been doing against us. So I wonder if there's a possibility to actually bring him on, if we need him, off the bench on the right and try and get on the outside of his man and get crosses in. But yeah, I can't see him starting a game anytime soon.
Yeah, especially, you know, coming from injury, and especially as well, what the kind of player is, relies so much on being sharp, having quick, nimble feet. And it was actually interesting to hear, I don't know if you heard Maddison talk about him. He was asked who the most skillful player at Tottenham is, and he said, I think the most skillful and sharpest player is Manor Solomon. And these are things we are kind of struggling with, especially when we're getting the ball out wide quickly to our wingers, and then the winger seems to not be able to progress the ball, you know, past their fullback, or in any way they seem to either go backwards or a lot of the time losing the ball. So maybe having Manor Solomon as an option, someone who actually has a bit of trickery about him, which I think some of our wingers do tend to struggle with, could make a bit of a difference. I wasn't sold on the signing when we did sign him. I was happy with kind of the start he made. I still don't think he is the answer. I still think we only got him because he was a free. I don't think we would have paid money for him if he, you know, would have cost money. So for me, the jury's still a bit out on him. But look, I'm definitely willing to see what he does when he gets back from injury. It's been so long without him, so hopefully he can really kickstart his Tottenham career once he's back from injury.
Am I right in thinking that he started in that Burnley game?
Yeah, he got a couple of assists against Burnley
in that game, yeah.
And that would look like maybe, okay, got those assists, maybe he's going to kick on from that. And then unfortunately he picked up that big injury. Yeah. So I think he might have come on against Arsenal as well, the Emirates. He had a few decent appearances, but look, I wasn't that impressed with him at Fulham. Obviously, at Shakhtar, apparently he played quite well when he was there. So maybe he's someone, once he comes back from injury, can add another option and maybe make a bit of an impact.
He's got a good shot. He cuts in on his right. He's got a good shot into the far corner, similar to how Sonny does as well. But like I said, against Palace, there'll be lots of players in that position, so he might not be able to get that shot away. But we need as much depth as we can at the moment, and as much kind of game-changing, or as many game-changing options as we can from the bench. So
yeah, it'd be interesting to see in terms of, like, do you reckon he might be in a bit of like competition with Werner in terms of who's still here next season? Do you reckon that could be a case?
Yeah, definitely. I think if Solomon shows a fair bit towards the end of the season, that would put some doubt on us paying 15 million for Werner. So it'd be interesting to see.
All right, next up, talking about some positive injury news, now a bit negative, and obviously Ryan Sessegnon. We all spoke about how he picked up that injury for the under-21s a few days ago, and Ali Gold has given a bit more detail about that injury. He said that Ryan Sessegnon has now injured his other hamstring to the one that he did at the start of the season, explaining why the left back was so despondent when he picked up the injury. He was quoted as Ali Gold was quoted saying, after 33 minutes, he went down, you looked at him, and he stayed down with his hands on his head. He was absolutely gutted. The physios worked on him for 5 minutes, and he couldn't even put much weight on it, which was absolute rubbish for him. From what I understand, it is a hamstring injury, but this time it's on the other side, and that is absolutely gutting, because at least if it's like a recurring injury, obviously it's gutting in one sense, but at least like you know what the problem is. But the fact that he's done it to the other hamstring now, and that's now caused a problem, that probably leads into, you know, the fact that what maybe he's can't seem to trust his own body to stay fit. Yeah. And when he's injured one hamstring, and now it's the other hamstring that's injured.
Well, and also the hamstring injury that he did at the beginning of the season, that wasn't his first hamstring injury either. So, yeah, terrible news for Ryan Sessegnon. I feel really bad for him. He is a talented player, but he doesn't have any, like, even when he is fit, he doesn't believe in himself. And I think that probably comes from not really trusting his body, as you mentioned. So, you know, it's going to be another long period out for him, more kind of recuperation and time in the physio's room. And he probably doesn't even feel like a proper part of the squad because he's so rarely training. I was at the open training session last week and he was training there and I was really surprised to see it. And then just, like you said, 30 minutes of his first under-21 game back. And he's down again. He's got so much talent, that boy, but it's really hard to see him kind of forging a career for himself in the Premier League at the moment with the amount of injuries that he gets.
And it's also a bit of a double-edged sword with these injuries as well, because the more he gets injured, the less like faith Spurs have in him. Mm-hmm. But also, if they want to sell him, the more he gets injured, the harder he is to sell as well, because no one else is going to take that chance on. Maybe like if we're going to say, okay, he's injury prone, so let's get rid of him. Well, who's going to take him if he keeps getting injured?
When did we sign him? 2019?
Yeah.
So let's say he must have signed a 5 or 6 year deal. His contract will be coming up in the next year or two. It's very hard to see him signing another contract at Spurs. And yeah, he'll probably end up going on a free. And look, if he can be the main man at a club somewhere, maybe he might even have to drop down. You know, he might have to drop down to the Championship or a relegation-threatened Premier League team anyway. But if he can be the main man and really, he is talented, but these hamstring injuries will affect his pace as well, and that's one of his big strengths.
Next up, we're going to be talking about Hugo Lloris, who was talking to The Athletic, and he had some very interesting quotes about his time at Tottenham, especially about the specific period under Mauricio Pochettino. And he said, under Pochettino, you could see the progression year after year, and we were very, very competitive. We were close to winning. I think at the time we missed 2 or 3 more players to compete for success and to win trophies. Our progression was too fast for the club because at the time they were focused on the new stadium. They did not have the financial reserve as they do now. At that time, we needed to add a few players and regenerate that group of players. He went on to say that in terms of that when I felt we were most capable of winning a trophy, we had to move to Wembley. The year before at White Hart Lane, we finished unbeaten. We won 17 games and drew 2. It was a big record at the time. We thought if we stayed at White Hart Lane, we could match that same tally of points, but we moved to Wembley, a different environment and stadium. We had to deal with that a year and a half, and even with that, we managed to get into the top 4. So some really interesting quotes about, you know, that time period at Tottenham. And obviously that was something that a lot of Tottenham fans at the time were frustrated with, the fact that we, you know, maybe didn't kick on, really pushed about for a couple of players. I remember the narrative at the time, we had such a good team. It was like, how do you improve this team? How do you sign players who get into this team? But it's interesting to hear it from him that even there was a feeling amongst the squad that we just needed those 2 or 3 players, and maybe we could have really gone the extra step in winning trophies.
Yeah, and it mirrors what Pochettino said as well. Kind of, he used obviously the term the painful rebuild. But yeah, it's kind of like the addition of 2 or 3 top level players. What basically Liverpool were able to do when they sold Coutinho and bought Alisson and Van Dijk, Tottenham weren't able to do. Just talking about that kind of move to Wembley and the financial restrictions that Spurs had on them then because they were building the new stadium. I see this thing come up all the time about how at the time Daniel Levy said, the new stadium won't affect our ability to make transfers. And a lot of Spurs fans are really annoyed at him because they think, you know, that was clearly a lie. Well, my argument to that is, I don't think Daniel Levy could ever have come out and said in public, we haven't got any money to spend on players. Because then what happens is you get vultures circling, coming for your best players. And also when you are trying to buy some players, they're not going to give it to you at, you know, the kind of prices you might be able to get if you are just saying that it's business as usual. So the stuff that Hugo Lloris is saying doesn't surprise me at all. I always felt at that time that, of course, we weren't going to be able to spend a lot of money on players. And that's why we went, 2 windows without buying anyone, certainly a summer window without buying anyone. And I kind of agree with Hugo. I do think at that time, had it not... the quote I particularly agree with is it was almost like the club couldn't catch up with the success that we were having under Pochettino. When Pochettino joined, the long-term or medium to long-term plan of the club was build the stadium, then get in the Champions League through the revenue that we're getting from the stadium. And it all happened about 5 or 6 years earlier than Levy was expecting it to. And I agree with Lloris, we couldn't buy the players that we would have needed to go that extra step during those Wembley years, or that Wembley 18 months, and push on and win the title. But it was so fun to watch around then. You know, I don't look back on those times with any negativity whatsoever.
Is there a case to say that given that the project was moving quicker than expected, maybe was it unfair to expect maybe a bit more flexibility with the board on that case? If they're saying, okay, look, we're now in the Champions League quicker than expected, maybe we should be able to more quickly spend a bit more money than we did.
I think it comes back to that reality that we all know about ENIC, which is that they don't spend their own money. They only spend the money that is revenue by the club. The club gets through revenue, and then in terms of the stadium, it was all put up against big loans. So, you know, obviously, it would have been nice for, you know, Daniel Levy to spend £300 million of ENIC's money at that point, but it's just that's not the way that they do it, and it was never going to be. But yeah, it would have been nice. But also, which players? I mean, I can't think off the top of my head which players we would have been able to get through the door that at that time Chelsea or Man City or Man United weren't going to buy ahead of us to really push us onto that next level.
Do you reckon, though, maybe slightly them? And obviously we're all playing in hindsight, but in hindsight, given the fact that we were so close to winning then, and we haven't obviously been near winning for like 5 years now. It's obviously getting close to like half a decade where we haven't been as close as that. So do you reckon there's any part of them that feels like maybe in hindsight we could have just like strike while the iron's hot a bit more than considering that we've now gone 5 years and we've just even since the stadium we've been in the stadium now 4 or 5 years and we still haven't got any close to where we were before.
Yeah, I just think it's really easy to say that's what we should have done, but it was just timing that didn't allow us to do it. It basically is how I feel about it. But yes, you know, would I have loved us to do that? And would it have been better for us and give us a better chance to not let Chelsea win it the next year? I think it was who won it the next year.
Yeah, but I would say, do you reckon the board would have any regrets or not? Or you just think they did what was right for the club?
I think we know about the board. They're very stubborn in terms of the sustainable way that they run the football club.
All right, the final story we're going to talk about is Eric Dier and his time at Bayern Munich, and Bild are now reporting out in Germany. But Eric Dier is unlikely to stay at Bayern Munich beyond this summer, with the German side concerned about his lack of pace. I mean, it doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to probably realise that might have been the case when they did sign him, which makes this signing all the more bizarre. Obviously, he did sign a 6-month loan deal with a potential view to signing on a free. But does it surprise you that there's now reports of this happening when it would have been obvious to anyone that would have been the case when signing him?
It strikes me as a bit weird that this story has come out just when they've also announced that Tuchel's going to leave at the end of the season. It feels like maybe there are some like agent leaks or people trying to throw other people under the bus, etc. But I don't think Dier was even playing in that last game. He's played in the first few, I think, but then De Ligt has been brought back in. The thing about Eric Dier that's funny is he's not slow. He's just his acceleration is not good. So when he gets up to full pace, he's actually relatively, you know, for a centre half, he's not slow.
It takes him a while to do it.
But he's like a tugboat. He turns really slowly, and I'm sure that's what they're talking about. I think Eric Dier will go on a free somewhere. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go back to Portugal, maybe Sporting Lisbon or somewhere in the summer. But, you know, has he really been bought for his play as a centre half, or has he been bought because he's Harry Kane's mate? I'm not really sure.
I mean, considering that the thing they're pointing out is he lacks pace, and that's something that I think a lot of people, and I think any scout who scouted him would have probably pointed that out. So I must have been for other reasons rather than they thought he would have pace. I would assume it's just all very, very odd. The fact that it was not transfer to begin with, and now they're saying we're now concerned with lack of pace. It's like, well, I think anyone in world football would have told you that would have been an issue. So the whole thing is very strange. I agree. You probably go back to Sporting Lisbon. You know, he's always talked about going back home. So look, I do wish him all the best, but looks like his time at Bayern Munich might be coming to an end. But look, that is all for today's Tottenham Update. Let me know in the comment section below what you think of everything we discussed today. If you liked what Barnaby had to say, go check him out on the Spurred On podcast. The link will be in the title of the video and in the description as well. So go check him out. But like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.